Now, actually, we have the pleasure of being with my sister, who is a minister in the Lord. And what church are you with?
I go to First Baptist Church of Brownsville.
Now, you are from Africa, West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you would introduce yourself, because I want to make sure I get the correct spelling. And if you would spell your name and tell us what country you are from, and then we will begin this interview.
Okay, my name is Minister Mengue Manaba Eka-Abila.
And how do you spell that?
Mengue is Mengue. Manaba is M'*Anaba. Eka-Abila is Eka-Abila.
And you are from what country?
I'm from Cameroon, West Africa.
You're from Cameroon. One of the things that I wanted to do, as you know, I've told you, I've just come back from Ethiopia. And I was so impressed, not that I haven't always been impressed with the African woman, but I focused on her and the kind of center of strength that I saw. And I want to talk about it, and I want to talk with an African woman and to explore the spiritual center, the contributions, the role of the African woman, her cosmology, her philosophy, as much as one can from their own center and their own experience and standpoint. So the first question I'd like for you to deal with is, what was the role of the woman in African society?
Yeah. Well, the role of the African woman is a multifaceted one. I could just name a few that are more prevalent. The African woman is viewed as endowed with somewhat mystical powers. She has the power of life or death in her own family, that is her children, her husband. It was believed that a woman will make her own children prosper and her husband if she has good, so to speak, good beneficial powers. But if she was a witch or wicked witch, then she would have the reverse effect. And they usually made her responsible for the untimely death of her husband or the untimely death of her children. And also she was the midwife. She was the medicine person. Some people would say medicine woman. She knew medicine, the barks, the herbs, and all that kind of things. And she was actually the queen of her compound. She took care of it. She made sure it was clean and neat. She made sure that there was no evil influence in the compound. Of course, she didn't do this all by herself. She always had received help from relatives or her children or neighbors. So, and she was also good at farming, in terms of just you're tilling the ground or harvesting the crops, things like that. The man had a different role, but they were complementary. So.
Now we are looking at the footage I took in Ethiopia. You see all of these women with this very heavy load coming off the mountain, large pots of water which weigh tremendous amounts of weight, wood on them that's 4 foot high. How would you explain? Some people would look and say that the women work too hard, that they are oppressed. But how does the African woman view? You're looking at this. Just explain what we are looking at, what we're seeing.
Well, I would not call that oppressed because I've done all of that myself. Carry water on the head or on the back, or firewood. Like, if she does not do it, and as you notice, if she doesn't do it, who would do it? Because the man has his own loads too, and everybody has a load. The child, the younger people, everybody's carrying something. Even though the men's loads are on the donkey, but nobody goes bare hands from the farm. So somebody has got to carry those those things. If she doesn't carry her own firewood, how is she going to cook? If she doesn't carry those heavy loads, inside you have all the vegetables and the food and everything inside there. So someone has to carry them home. So I don't think the woman views this as being oppressed. She works hard for certain, but she has no other way around. And actually, the African woman enjoys working and working hard. She takes pride in that. Anybody in the village who doesn't work hard is unwelcome because it's viewed as useless.
I wish you could further elaborate on that she enjoys this kind of work. I mean, here is a lady, there's footage here of a lady, she just come into the compound, she just took off one of these heavy things of water. She's now nursing this baby, she's combing one's hair. She's at the same time pulling something to prepare for dinner. It looks like awful hard work. How women here would look at this and say, that's preposterous.
Well, it would be an ethnocentric view. If anybody viewed this as what you just said, what?
Preposterous.
Yeah.
That is something that one would get pleasure out of doing.
Yeah, we do enjoy this, and we are proud to do those things. An African woman is the one who takes care of her farm, her compound, her children, and her husband. She's proud to do those things. And if she doesn't, the ones who don't do so well, they are being mocked. They are put in songs. No woman can survive in our society who is lazy, who doesn't take proper care of her own children and of her own farm. It's viewed as it's unacceptable anyway. So we do these things. You go to the farm, you work hard, and after that you come home and you take care of your children and of your house or your compound and of your husband.
I want to ask you two questions related to that. One is, how can you define that in its ancientness? I mean, how did the woman come about to be the one to take care of the farm? And then I want to deal with some values. But first, let's look at how the woman came, because it seems to me, from my research, that this has a long antiquity.
Yes, it's been done over thousands of years. We've been doing this. Our foremothers did this, and from generation to generation, we do this, and we are proud.
Now, is that because the men, it seems that before humanity settled down to farming, Men did the hunting and so forth, and women who were left in the village began to cultivate, and they started farming, and they seem to have continued the same. Am I correct?
No, the women were never left in the village because the hunting, after you hunt the game, you must eat it with a staple food. And where would you get the staple food? The woman couldn't get the staple food by staying in her house. You know, you must accompany the meat with vegetables and with staple food. And this was done through farming. And the farming is not exclusively done by women. Men have their role in the farming. They clear the farm, they fell the trees, and they cut the thick roots, because the woman is tilling and then sowing the grain or whatever. And the man is doing the big kind of farming that requires a lot of more energy, such as digging the hole and planting things such as plantain or other trees. So those require a lot of digging. And sometimes it's not always easy to dig those holes because there are roots. And then the men specialize in those kinds of farming jobs. Whereas the woman, the man will clear the farm and the woman will till the ground. And wherever there's an additional work to be done, then the man will intervene right there. Both of them were in the farm. And then after the farm, the men would go hunting and the women would go home, carrying all those heavy loads, and then they would do the cooking, and they would take care of the children, bathe them. But the children would go collect the water. Only women who had no children would go fetch the water. But so it's a division of labor. So it was well organized.
Okay, now, the women with all this firewood and those big things of water, it's not too heavy for them? I mean...
Yeah, it's heavy, for sure it is. But you're trained from childhood to carry heavy loads. From childhood, like I just mentioned, children fetch the water. And sometimes you have to go, it depends on the situation of your village, from the water, either the pond or the well. In whatever case, you have to go fetch that water. And since the adult women, are busy doing the major, jobs at home, then the children would specialize in fetching the water. But sometimes the women would go with the children, because sometimes the well is right by the bathing place. It's either the river or a pond. So the women would do both. They go there to bathe, and then after bathing, they collect some. They take some of the water home. But since you need a whole lot of water to cook, for instance, or to do other kinds of tasks, then children would go about 2 or 3 times to the water fountain to fetch the water, back and forth a number of times, because you need a whole lot of water. But at any rate, it's hard and everything, but it is not easy for anybody. So you kind of adjusted to that.
Was there pleasure? Are there moments of great happiness and recreation, peace? I mean, it seems like people just work hard all the time.
No, they don't work hard all the time. There are times, as the Bible says, there is time for everything. There's a time for clearing the farm, a time for gathering all the dry leaves and burning them, and then tilling the ground and sowing or planting, and then cutting the weeds, and then when it's ripe, harvesting. But then there are moments specialized for recreational activities. And we have all kinds of artists. We have singers, we have musicians, we have dancers, we have all kinds of pleasure. We do have pleasure. Like after fetching the water and cooking, everybody has eaten, everybody has bathed. So what we do, we usually spend those times in recreational activities.
What are some of those?
Like storytelling, singing, dancing, playing, you name it. We do, and teasing each other, and for children, outright playing. Just playing and playing, and it's a very peaceful kind of life.
When we talk about a very peaceful kind of life, let's look at some of the values and kind of compare them with the values in the Western world, our more modern world, where we have everything, cars, and we fly, and we moving, and so forth. How would you make a comparison?
Well, I do not want to speak from an ethnocentric view, but how can I say, that's our way of life, and I guess I would not compare it with the Western way of life. In the West there is a lot of technology, a lot of cars and all that, but it comes along with other burdens too.
For an example.
Well, you can just compare. You went to Africa a few times. We may not have all those cars and all those facilities, but we have this quietness, this peace that is there, and we enjoy each other. And you see that the crime rate is very low. See that the crime rate is very low. Fighting occurs from time to time, but as soon as it starts, you will see people coming from left and right and say no, and they appease the fighters and say, no, this is your brother or your sister. You don't have to fight. We can settle the matter peacefully. So there are a great number of advantages in this way of life. People know each other, and even if they don't know each other, they know that these are human beings, and they have respect for that, for them. But we have our own hassles, like if it doesn't rain or sometimes drought and things like that. But honestly, I don't remember anybody really complaining about those burdens. You simply do it. You go to the farm and you come home and with your own firewood, because you know you have to take care of your own house. And that's basically it. We really are enjoying a peace, and this peace, I don't think anybody would want to sacrifice that peace for this kind of. There's a lot of stress in this side of the ocean. It's the modern life, and the more money you make, the more you spend. And you have to take care of these cars and make sure nobody steals them. Or sometimes you have accidents and a lot of people die and things like that. So that's the flip side of the coin, the modern life coin. But this traditional life has advantages and disadvantages as well. But the advantages so far outweigh the disadvantages, and that's why you see a lot of people, and most Africa is rural. Most Africa is rural. We have cities, true, but most people prefer to live in their villages because there is a lot less stress, but more hard work.
Can we talk about the spirituality of Africa, the African family, the African way of life, its cosmology? I found that the African is perhaps, if you want to use the word religion as opposed to spirituality, is the most religious person I've ever seen. Can we talk about that? How does he perceive God and nature, and why is he so spiritual?
Well, at this time of our history, there is, well, on top of the traditional belief system, there is, some of us have adhered to Christianity, some to Islam, and others to other religions. But the traditional African life could not be viewed, there is no notion of secular versus religious.
Yes.
Because the traditional belief system is that the ancestors or the parents are godlike figures. And so they have this power of life or death. They have the power to bless or to curse. And so this power does not go away when they die. It's still there. If your father or your mother was not happy with you at the time of their death, this is very bad for you. And so it is common to see people doing rituals in their father's or mother's tomb to ask for sort of expiation for their wrongdoings, asking for forgiveness to their dead parents, because death is not viewed as you're dead and that's it. Death is viewed as a transcendence. You are transferred. You are transferred to the unseen world, which, though it may not be seen, but it is there, and it influences the seen world, the world that is seen, and the world that is felt. So in that regard, people are very careful to act in a way that does not arouse any wrath from the dead ancestors or those who are still alive. People are careful not to offend the elders because they know in general that if you offend the elders, this is going to bring a curse on you. So you want to act in a way that brings about a blessing and not a curse. That's why you see a lot of that religious sort of life, or whatever you want to call it. It's not like I'm here now and this is not the church, so I want to do whatever I want and I'll go to church. Of course, you see that in this today's modern world, especially in the cities where people are more quote-unquote modernized or westernized. But the notion is there, it's very prevalent in our daily life. And for instance, the notion of tomb, the cemetery. We traditionally, there is no cemetery, especially where I come from. there is no cemetery. The cemetery has come as a result of after the infiltration of colonialism. But traditionally, we bury our dead within our compound.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a place called cemetery. Like my mother and my grandmother, they are buried right in our yard. And my father is buried right across the street. So there's no notion of cemetery. We just with them.
That's very fascinating. I was trying to allow you more time in developing that, because I think the respect that the young people have for elders in Africa, and the lack of respect that they have for elders here, may have something to do with that. We used to have that respect. We were getting away from it. The more we mix with Europeans, the more we seem to lose that respect. So can you develop that in terms of children and their elders and that great respect that they have? Can you develop it so we can see it a little more and then transpose it to here?
Well, what I can say is, in the West, you guys have the religious versus the secular world. Then in the secularism is more about the tangible, what I can see, what I can touch, materialism. So in this kind of philosophy, nobody wants to grow old. Nobody wants to be an elder, because everybody wants to live forever and be young forever, because they view old age in a negative way. Whereas for us, traditionally, I'm speaking here, that being an elder is a privilege. It's true that there are, nobody wants to be old because of all the aches that come along with old age. But in traditional African society, if you are an elder, this is the greatest status that you can have. Then it means there is wisdom in you. It means there is power in you, that people will come seeking a blessing from you. If things are not going so well at job, or like this person is fired from one job to another, they will go to the elders of the village, say, fathers and mothers, please bless me. Something is wrong here, or my wife has had so many miscarriages, or we've buried so many children. We need a blessing. And who are they going to seek? They're going to seek the elders and not the younger people. And so in that view, being an elder is such a privilege. And so and when you want to, in terms of decision making and influencing many important aspects of the society, only God comes on top of the elders. But after God, you have the elders. And so African people, they don't view it as bad to be, like, as for me, I've been called a mother since I was in my early 20s. My own parents, for instance, my father called me mother. And when your own parents begin to call you mother, this is such is overwhelming. It tells you that you have behaved so well. You have behaved in a commendable way that now they have put you at the level of an elder in spite of your young age. Now you become a mother. or a father, and they will include you in the secret, if they have secret societies in that village or whatever, in the decision making, you are part of it. They will listen to you in spite of your young age, because they say he may be or she may be young in age, but he has the wisdom or she has the wisdom of an elder. So we do not want to cling to something called youth, everybody wants to behave in a way, not everybody though, but most people want to behave in a commendable way that will promote them to the level of elder. But don't get me wrong, not every old person is really respected as an elder. Because if you are old in age, but behave in a way that is disrespectful, and you are inconsiderate, you may be old, but no one will have any kind of respect for you. But those elders who are older in age and in wisdom and knowledge, they are respected, whether they be men or women. But women seem to have a little more, because it's been somewhat mystified, the powers of a woman. They believe she can make you live, she can kill you, she can make you prosper, she can make you, and a lot of people, I remember back in my country, some men who have had a series of misfortunes and maybe lose their, if those who are in business, like they go bankrupt, sometimes they turn around and look at their wives and say, "You're the one who brought me this bad luck." So things like that.
Actually, I would like to explore a little deeper the female and the center of the woman as somehow being center of the family. I saw strength in her that I had never seen. I'd seen it, but I never realized it. But I saw a different kind of strength in the black woman this time. A very fascinating strength. And I think that you are moving towards the center. So I would ask you if you would continue to talk about the position of a woman in her spiritual dominion and how she's looked at both now and historically, and to kind of clarify the woman's live thing, because the woman's live in the West tries to influence the African center for women, and I think it's two different things. I don't think they have a great deal of reciprocity, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the woman is really viewed as a very powerful figure, in the sense that, she carries the baby in her womb and she rears the children, whether they be hers or not. She is really the central figure of when you say family, I would say village, because the African family is not just made up of the father, the mother, and the children. It's made up of the father, the mother, the grandfather, the grandmother, the uncles, the cousins, and the nieces, the nephews, you name it. So it's big, and there's nobody can do without the woman. And I've seen a lot of people who are viewed as very prosperous and powerful, and a lot of people attribute that to to their wife or wife, especially the main wife in polygamous societies. Like the first wife is viewed as she sets the stage or the tone for how good or bad the life of a man is going to be. I think there is some exaggeration to it, but they really attribute so much to her, and this has sometimes some undesirable consequences in terms of some men then just sit back and relax, and they don't see that, well, sometimes they could reap the consequences of their own misbehavior, but then they will just say the woman brought the bad luck. So the woman is the central figure of the family, the African family. No, how could they survive? How could they even survive, let alone thrive, without the woman? Because she gives you, she cooks the food. She does all these things as you observed. She takes care of the children in one aspect, but the men also have their own contribution to the children, to the upbringing of the children. The men take care of the male children. They show them how to hunt, how to lay traps, how to fell a tree, a big tree in no time, in a very efficient way, and they teach them a lot of things. And the women take care of the girls, and so on and so forth. But before a certain age, all the children, the responsibility is in the women's hand. And so nobody could even conceive a possibility of putting the woman she's really the center.
But is she recognized? Is she given that kind of acknowledgement? Is she recognized as that in the African society?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. The few aspects that I can remember, for instance, men know, and our society knows, that if you want to have a successful marriage, you better conquer your mother-in-law's heart. You do your best to make her love you. Because if your mother-in-law does not love you, you're in trouble. That's one way. And then the other way is, before they give the girl away to marriage, nobody will dare to ignore the woman's opinion. Because if the woman doesn't like this man, she has enough power in her hands to stop the whole thing. But she's not going to do it in the way that is perceived on this side, in the West. Things may be, when you come from this side, you go to Africa, you will see the woman as though she's so effaced and she has no saying in what is happening. That's true. That's not true. Because it may look like, when it's to marry a girl, for instance, they don't go to talk to the woman. They talk to the man. Okay, they talk to the man, and it seems as though the men take the decision and just put the woman on the spot. But that's not so. It just looks so, but it's not so. Because, first of all, the woman is more inquisitive. She will investigate, who is this man? Who is his father? And who is his mother? What kind of people are they? Do I want to put my daughter in his hands? Because the daughter is not just marrying the young man. She's being married into that family, into that village. So do you want to put your daughter in those kinds of hands? And generally, the man is not the one who does that kind of investigation. The woman does. And once she sees that she doesn't like that family, or certain prevalent aspects of that family, she will make sure in her own way. She's not going to say, I don't want this man to marry my daughter. She's not going to say that. Because from childhood, the woman is trained not to be challenging. You do not challenge man's authority. The man is the head of the house. The man is the head. But the woman is not like the man is the head and that's it, the woman is just a slave. No. But the woman knows that in order to real power lies in the fact that you respect your man, you show him respect. Even if sometimes you feel that he is wrong, you're not going to tell him you're wrong in his face. You're going to wait till the appropriate time to talk to him in a respectful manner. And nothing gets done if the woman does not agree. The man may say yes out there and say, yeah, this is my daughter and I'm the head of the house, and yeah, but if the woman does not agree, she's not going to say it like she knows how she's going to convince the man. And so nothing gets done without the woman's approval.
But it is true.
Yeah.
She does appear to be docile,
Mm-hmm.
and submissive, and so forth. But maybe we'll talk about how does the African woman see, and you've already,
Mm-hmm.
viewed some of it, but a little further. How does she see the man and men in general in relationship to that relationship, and how is that relationship in terms of family and the husband and wife?
The relationship between man and woman, I could say, it's about wisdom. My mother told me the secret of how to to have the best or the most successful, the most cordial relationship with your husband or just males in general. It's a matter of understanding each other. Where does the man come from? Why does the man want to be the head, the chief, and all that? If you grant it to him, but then you also recognize that you have a lot of power, a lot of influence in him. But most of the things is just an appearance. This woman who looks so docile, the man would go sometimes bare hands and the woman would carry his bag, and so it looks like this man is crushing his wife and he's so domineering, but not so. You will see most women who really completely dominate their husbands are those who look the most docile. She's just granting him this honor in the public. And she even calls him master or chief or whatever title, authoritative title you want to give to the husband. But then this big man, the more docile the woman looks, or appears to him, the more he realizes he needs her. And then he will not do anything without consulting her. And even if he does, the woman knows where it's all going to end. And that's true, that's what I have witnessed. And so, of course, there are bad marriages, because if the girl was not taught not to challenge the man's authority, don't be challenging, and the whole thing works. But if you challenge the man in his face, then you arouse his ego, and then he can turn ugly with you. And then you're going to, it's not like that. The man has always wanted to be chief or head of the house, so just grant it to him. But then he knows that you are right by his side and you are his co-head or co-chief. But don't claim it so loud, don't be so arrogant with it. And if you grant that to the man, yeah, everything goes smoothly. Be considerate to your man, and everything works. But if you want the man to turn tyrannical, then challenge him. Tell him he's no man, or that he cannot dictate to you, or whatever. That's when it turns ugly. And I saw the model in my own parents. And so it is just the appearance. So, but the women, the most successful women in our society, are those who show respect to the man. And once you give that respect to the man, he will give it right back to you. And so it goes smooth. But if you are the challenging type, then you're going to have to fight with them, the man. And this is not, people would strongly advise against that. I mean, those who know. But since we have taken a lot of modern Western values, so you find a lot of African women, especially in the cities, who do not show that kind of respect. And they are challenging, and so there's a lot of fighting, and if there is no change, then they end up in divorce. We're having more and more divorce cases now. And also, I couldn't totally blame the woman, though, because now also the modern values have been taken on also by the man. So the African man does not behave anymore as his forefathers. This complementarity is no longer there as it used to be. So now it used to be the man does, both man and woman go to the farm. Then came the colonialism, and then now this kind of Western kind of jobs. And that's when the idea came that the woman would stay in the house, only cooking and taking care of the house, when the man was out there, making money one way or the other, either a job, office job, or business, or things like that. And so the woman is at home, and then the man just became something else. It was no longer the complementarity, and then they started not recognizing the woman. And then the big cities where you had a lot of opportunities for promiscuity, and then the movies, the Western movies, and then Western values challenging our own values, just demonizing our all aspects of our tradition. Then people started emulating the Western manners. So now it's somewhat chaos. It's no longer what it used to be. It's now um, men make money instead of bringing the money home to see what is needed in the household and to share with their wives. It's now you you can go out there, hang out in the bars and go with whoever you meet in the bar, and a lot of promiscuity going on. And so the role of the woman, the African woman, becomes somewhat twisted because she now feels different. This is not the way it used to be. The man came home with the money and they both took care of the children. The man was controlling certain aspects of the children, basic education, and the woman also did her part. But now the man is most of the time outside, even after work. And so the woman in the house said, "What am I doing here? You see, I might as well go out there and hang out too." And so it's not what it used to be anymore. Things have changed drastically. The dowry, it used to be before that the parents handled the marriages of their children. As I said, the man is the one who would say the final yes or no, but the woman works her own views out, and she knows how to communicate them to the husband without being challenging or arrogant. But now no more. They say that was, Western manners came. Now you don't need your parents' opinion anymore. You marry whom you want. And then the dowry, they say no. Dowry is selling your child. There's no more dowry. Now people just meet and they like each other and they just go ahead and get married anyway. And now we have divorce in the big cities is almost as bad as here. Now marriage does not impress even me anymore, because you see a lot of people getting married now in fanfare, and a few months later the marriage is not there because they rejected all our traditional values. The parents were not looking for the sexiest guy for their daughter, and the parents of the man were not looking for the sexiest girl, whether slim or fat, tall or small. All they were looking for the inner values. What kind of person is this man or that woman? And then the parent, if she comes out of a good family, people who may not be rich, but they are considerate, they are good people, then you would be proud to marry their daughter, and vice versa. But we have taken so much of external values that the relationship with among men and women has become something deplorable.
While we're talking about the family, I'd like to touch on polygamy, since that tradition wasn't part of African traditional family systems. In the West, that has always been looked at as very negative. But how did the African woman tolerate or look at, how is she able to accept it, and how does she view it today?
Well, I'll start with today. Today, you see, as I just mentioned, everything traditional has been demonized. Polygamy is bad. dowry, paying the dowry for when you want to marry a girl is viewed as bad. Everything has just been rejected, especially starting in the 60s. So, but when we go back to the ancient days, when polygamy was an institution, it was institutionalized, you could understand the reason why. First of all, in those days, when there was polygamy, I guess the reasons were that men died. You had more women than men in terms of the men who go to war, get killed, and then you have less. You have more women for less men, and then other reasons. So, and it was an economic system. For all the reasons, in those days, people married. The more women you had, the richer, or at least you had a greater potential to become rich, because the more women had meant you had as many farms, because each woman had her own farm. And so the more farms you have, the more crops you get. And so it made you more respected in society. And a bigger family. And then another advantage was that there was no single. The notion of single woman, especially in where I come from, was unheard of. There was no such a thing as a single woman. Most women got married very young. My maternal grandma was married when she was a teenager, and my paternal grandma was married as a child. And it wasn't like when people hear that a child married, but it wasn't like that. It was very, very structured, very organized. People looked for women in good families, in families that were not reputed for witchcraft or for bad habits. And once they found a good family, they would prize the girls from that kind of family. So it was even to the point where people would say, I love your family so much, and I see one of your wives is pregnant. If that child comes out a girl, if that child is born a girl, I want that child to become my wife. It doesn't necessarily mean that the man who is claiming this is going to marry that child. It just means that someone from his household is going to get the girl. Okay? So, and they're not kidding. They will begin to bring gifts, And if it is the baby is born a girl, then they begin to bring gifts to say, this one is ours. She belongs to our family, as long as they have the consent of the parents. And when the child turns about, say, 10 years old, then they take her to her husband. Not that they take her to her husband comes, pays the final dowry, and the girl's family will also prepare a dowry. And at that time there was no money. It was not money. It was valuable objects, in addition to food and drinks. So they will accompany the girl with all these goods. And the greater the family, the more things they will bring to show that this one belongs to a great family. And since she's only a child, they will put her in the house of the first wife, the senior wife. And the senior wife will train her, or will continue the training to show, okay, this is our husband, he likes this and he doesn't like that, and this is how to behave. And the senior wife will behave as if she was a mother to that child. And when she reaches puberty, the senior wife is the one who can now tell the husband she's ready. But then the husband will also give a gift to the senior wife for taking good care of this young wife of his. Okay? Because if he doesn't treat her well, she can spoil the whole thing. So that's how it went.
Were they jealousy? I mean,
Of course, people, there was, you're talking about human beings, there was a lot of competition. Like who cooked the best, the tastiest meal, because all the women would cook food and they bring their dish to the big house. The man had the big house and every woman had her own house or kitchen. Okay? And so they bring the food and the man will. And the one whose dish is eaten most, she's the one who's going to brag about how well she cooks. But it wasn't, nobody killed the other. It was just, And then people would fight even if they're not even, if they don't share the same husband. Now when they share the same husband, and they could, competition could go that far, but just fighting, like giving blows to each other. But before it goes any further, people will be there, all the neighbors will be there to separate them. Say, hey, you don't do this. You are family. You are one. You don't fight each other. You take care of each other. And they did do that. They did take care of each other. When one of the wives delivered a baby, for a whole month, she didn't cook. She didn't do any kind of work. She was taken care of by the co-wives. They will do her all this and they give the box and all that and cook food for her. And they would take care of the baby. So it was not, and the husband himself knew that you have to be wise. Even if you prefer one of the women, you don't overshow this, because this could trigger jealousy, the other wife's jealousy. So you want to be, if you bring game, you want to give each one the portion, a fair portion. You don't give more to the other wife, the one you prefer. But of course you can do that when nobody is around. There were always signals that the one who was preferred always knew. But if she was wise, she kept her mouth shut. She didn't talk about those extra gifts that the husband would give her. And even if the other women knew, oh yeah, he prefers this one because she's younger or she's the newest. But as long as the man is fair to each one of them, if you are to spend the night with this woman, you better go, even if she's not the one you're crazy about. But you give each one of them their share of material things and emotional and all that. So it was, but when it is viewed, when you have an ethnocentric view of polygamy, then you think, what? And then you will just throw everything away. But now there is less and less polygamy because now we have Western values. We're using the money, and a lot of people just cannot afford it anymore. As simple as that. A lot of people economically cannot afford polygamy because you need to have a lot of money to entertain more than one woman.
Were the women faithful?
Well, every society has there is the official, the formal thing out there, and then there's always another world, on the underground world, sort of, so to speak. The faithfulness, I guess it was just a matter of, I guess men knew this, so they devised a few tricks to avoid this. But then I guess it was about not getting caught, basically. If you're not caught, then you're faithful. If you don't get caught, if you get caught, then you're unfaithful and you're punished. But the punishment varied from one people to another. Some people severely punish adultery. Others were not that severe, but there was always a punishment. Mm-hmm.
How did Western values of colonialism, how did it change? We've talked about it, but what was the impact on colonialization, Western values and so forth, in terms of the health of the people? I mean, you told me that in an earlier conversation, people used to live to get 70, 80, 90.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that a little bit, and how colonialism has really undermined the whole structure of traditional African society, to its detriment or to its benefit.
Well, fortunately, there are some good aspects, but the general impact has been detrimental in terms of the basic, structure of African society has been so disfigured that now is really strange. Sometimes you don't know what to think. The traditional medicine, for instance, the Westerners' influence has just demonized the whole thing about traditional medicine. Of course, some people have also, the traditional medicine people also, those who so-called traditional medicine people of today, they are no longer motivated by the same reasons that our ancestors were when they decided to take on the traditional medicine.
What is the difference?
The difference is now you have money. And when our ancestors were doing medicine, they did not have money in view. They had people's health in view. I remember my grandmother was a medicine woman, my paternal grandmother. They brought all the children to her in the evening after everybody has come back from the farm, cooked and eaten and bathed and everything. Then they would bring toward about 5:30 or 6, they would bring the children to my grandma, and she would give this one this kind of herb and the other one this kind of bark and the other one with not a penny. She did not demand any money. People would bring her gifts sometimes, but nobody had to. She did not make any kind of demand. She did this out of her love for people. And she did not pretend to be a psychic, which has now become common, like almost the vast majority of the people who claim to be medical traditional doctors, they also pretend to be psychics, or the equivalent of what is called here psychic. They will pretend to tell you the past and the present and the future, and this is most of the time, it's just taking advantage of people. And they have money in view. You cannot go for, like I say, a visit. You don't visit them. You don't go there with bare hands. And just to start the treatment, they demand goats and they demand all sorts of things, and of course, cash. So in that regard, it's like giving reason for the detractors of traditional medicine. Say all of them are just a bunch of crooks, which is not true, because the real traditional medicine people are there. They were there, and they were never motivated by material gain. And I myself, I know a few herbs and a few bucks, but I've never demanded any kind of money from anybody. You just help people because they need help. And if anybody feels like bringing something to you, it's not because you demand it, it's just because they are grateful for what the services you render them. So we had our medicine, and people got sick and they got cured and everything. And people, where I come from, I saw people, my two grandmas, my paternal and my maternal grandma, both of them died. My maternal grandma in her late 70s, and my paternal grandma died between late 70s and early 80s. She was quite old. Her first child, my uncle, died before her from a throat cancer because he was smoking pipe. But my grandma survived him, and she was in her early 80s or so when she died.
Are you telling me that these women that we see doing all this hard work
Yeah.
live to get that long?
Yes.
How? Why? I mean, it seemed like the work would have killed us.
Oh no! How can work kill anybody? Work would make you, when you work hard, you burn a lot of calories, and they ate good, natural, what they call here organic food. Lots of vegetables, fruit. And my grandma never retired as such. She worked until she couldn't, she got so sick she couldn't go to the farm anymore. And then she died. But we have a lot of old men and old women. Work doesn't kill them. Or on the contrary, I think work is very, very good for longevity. Because the harder you work, the more you burn them calories. And here with the exercise thing, because people don't work physically that much to burn so many calories, and they eat, and the food that they eat is not always natural. So, well, thanks to a lot of modern devices such as physical exercise and other medication, they manage to survive. But I think work is, and I mean hard work.
But when we look at the birth rate for Africans, it's very low. It's like in the 40s, and some countries even 30s. The West perceives Africa as having a very short longevity.
Well, this is today's Africa. You remember all of you guys were taken out of Africa. Very strong, healthy men and women. And if African African people's lifespan was so short, don't you think most of you guys would have died in the while you were crossing? No, I mean that's not true. This is today's Africa. Today's Africa is not the Africa that used to be. So if people die younger, I would not attribute this to African tradition or values. I would attribute this to other factors. Maybe traditions, some aspects of tradition are not always that practical, but in general, people lived long, and I mean longer in those days compared to now. And then a lot of people who die in their 30s and 40s, then are people, most of them are people who live in the cities. And they have a lifestyle that is not always the best. And some people live in slums. Whereas if they had lived in the village, I think it would have been a different story.
Now, that would be a part of the effect of the impact of colonialization
Yep,
in
yep.
Western. We were talking about that, so if you could go ahead and add that into our discussion.
Yeah, well, what I could tell is the people the elders in my village, the people who, I could say, the people who raised me in this traditional African large family where the entire community is involved in raising the children. You eat, from your mother's house, from the neighbor's house, and from everybody, it was involved in the process. And if you saw your neighbor's child misbehaving, you knew you could intervene and just spank him or her. I was spanked like that once. By someone I didn't even know, but he saw me misbehaving and he whipped my butt. And I ran to my parents. And I told my parents, this man has whipped me. Then they saw the man and they quietly asked him, what happened? Why did you whip her? He said, yeah, I saw her. She was just, she was being very aggressive to this other girl, and everybody told her to stop, but she wouldn't. So in the end, there was a fight, and I had to whip her. And they say, very good, to the man. They say, very, very good. And they shook hands with him and they let him go. So that's the kind of society I grew up in. But now is more and more, the family is becoming narrower. And people now drink those liquors, and people are no longer the same. And so people don't trust each other that much anymore. So things are just different. And that's the negative impact of colonialism. One of the negative aspects. So now, but the people I saw, and who were like whom I would just call the grandfathers and grandmothers, some of them are still alive today, well in their mid-70s, and some of them in their early or mid-80s. And those are the people who use barks and herbs for their as medicine or medication. So, and they don't. What has the trouble with what is now called traditional medicine People want to call it that way, but it's a lot of materialism involved. But if you go back to the real traditional medicine, which aimed at helping people, it was very so it was really different.
Finally, what I would like for you to speak on is you are a minister, and let's kind of look at the spiritual aspect of traditional African beliefs, and look at Christianity or the impact of Christianity or even Islam on that belief and the similarities. We talked a little bit about that, but do you find it that traditional African spirituality incorporates, is it broad enough to incorporate Christianity so that you can hold fast to your Christian belief and at the same time not discard your traditional belief?
Well, as a minister, I would say this, that there are many aspects of our tradition that are really confirmed in the Bible, like this love for your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. And being kind to people you don't even know. As this love aspect and love of the neighbor is a very strong African value that I find very I find the Bible reinforcing that. Like be considerate, be respectful to your fellow human being. I would say this. I remember when I was growing up, because I was born in the city, but I lived sometimes in the city, sometimes in the village. And while I was in the village, I saw a lot of good things. For instance, a total stranger would be passing on the street and you are there eating. It's about like 4:30 or 5 p.m. And this person looks tired, looks like he's coming from he's come a long way. And you just call him, say, "Hey man." When I say man, we just call at that time, there is a word that it encompasses both men and women. You just call them in general. Here would be person, but the best translation would be "Hey man, Amot." Mot is human being or person. So you just say, "Amot." "Hello, Amot." Then you say, "Hello. Oh, you look tired. Why don't you come and share this meal with us? And then you have a break, and then you can go on with." And that was so common. A total stranger. Then he will stop and share the meal and thank you. And if he feels like eat, he might even spend the night. Otherwise, he would just go on in his journey. It could be a female also. So aspects like that, when I read in the Bible to love your neighbor as yourself, and having been shaped by examples as the one I just described to you, then it's rather reinforcing my love and respect for fellow human beings. But then there are other aspects that are in opposite directions. Like this aspect of belief in the power of the ancestors, the dead or transferred ancestors. While I love my parents and grandparents, I have seen my own, I have seen their struggles. And I thank God that they were Christians. Though they went to this, a religion that I'm not going to name. But they do not focus much on Bible study. And so when they ran into great trouble, they usually didn't know what to do. And then they would go back to those things that they have abandoned, like the sacrifice of animals, being sprayed with the blood of a goat or a sheep or whatever. Those are things that I don't need as a Christian, because I'm a born-again Christian. I don't need any other blood than the blood of Jesus. So that aspect of my tradition, I reject that. Or like having an icon guard my compound. I don't believe in that. I now believe in angels. I believe in the Holy Spirit, and I believe that Jesus said He would be with me always. That if I am in trouble, I just have to call on His name. So there are aspects of tradition that are unacceptable to my faith, my Christian faith, but others that are rather reinforcing my Christian faith. But then, as the Bible says, you need discernment. You need discernment. I love my parents, as I said, and they were buried in the compound. But I don't believe they guard me. I believe they are there somewhere with God, and that maybe when I die, maybe I'm going to see them again. But we all depend on the same God. So I would rather go to the one who is the most powerful, who is more powerful than any enemy that I can face. So I will pass through all the ancestors and go directly to the throne of grace and call on the name of Jesus. That's me as a Christian. I don't know about the other religions like Islam and things like that. I don't know about them, but I know about the Christian faith in light of our tradition. Some aspects are good and some aspects go along with the Christian belief. Some aspects don't. So basically that's all I can say.
Finally, are there any final words that you would like to have for our viewing audience in regard to the black woman, the African woman, as being the center of our strength? If you would like to look at some of the traditional values that we may want to adapt that could help us through some of the crises that we are in today, and we are in many crises.
Well, I could say this. We certainly have to go back to our traditions, not to embrace all of them. We must not be indiscriminate. We must go with a sense of discernment back to our traditions and examine them, re-examine them through our own eyes and not the eyes of someone else. Because we can either revolutionize or improve our own values, our own traditions, based on our own experiences and not someone else's.
Yes.
And then make it better and then make it work for us for today's and the generation and the following generations. This complementarity between man and woman, this mutual respect I would strongly recommend that we go back to that and not focus on each other's weaknesses, but focus on our strengths. And then it's only when you show love and respect to each other that you can now have an impact on helping the other person in his or her weaknesses. And I think Jesus showed us this example, that as we go out there to preach the gospel to the people, you cannot just stand there in your self-righteousness and point a finger and say, you're bad, you're a sinner, you must change, you must repent. That will not work. But Jesus showed the example. He went in the houses of those outcasts and showed them love. And that love made them so humble as to repent from their sins and change. So I think we, the people, Africans and people of African descent, must re-examine our traditions in that manner and correct that which needs to be corrected and improve the rest of our values. I think that would make us a better society.
I want to thank you. Mm-hmm. And it's been marvelous having you.
Okay, same here. Thank you.